What's good, everybody? It's your boy D Nice with I2G Hip Hop back at it with another review. Today we are reviewing the duo album. I have called this collaboration album the East Coast Detox. Nas DJ Premier Lightyears album. Wasn't sure if this was going to come out, but I'm happy that it did. Urge everyone, like, comment, and subscribe. I2G Hip Hop, letter I, number 2, letter G, hip hop, all one word, on YouTube. The website, www.illuminati2g.com as well. Let's get right into it. I've got to say, Mass Appeal has had one of the greatest record label runs since like Def Jam in their heyday. I'm not going to go as far as say Death Row or Bad Boy or anything like that. It's a different structure as far as album sales and things of that nature. But I mean, just where it's one label dropping multiple albums, and they're all stellar quality this year. Mass Appeal has had a phenomenal run, at least within the last 5 to 10 years. To culminate to this album, really, I wanted to start this off and give Nas his flowers. He's one of my all-time favorite MCs. Got to see him live twice. Like, he's one of them dudes. And this is coming from a diehard Tupac fan. During the whole, whatever you want to call it, East Coast, West Coast, a lot of the beefs that Tupac had, that's how I started listening to East Coast hip hop. So I didn't start really listening to Mobb Deep till like 96, 97. And then I really got into their music. I'm like, wow. Same with Jay-Z. You know, Nas a little bit before that because, with Illmatic. And then that's right around the time It Was Written came out, around the same time as All Eyes on Me. And, you had those albums kind of going from different coasts. But I really appreciate the businessman that Nas has turned into, as well as the seasoned MC now, in his early to mid 50s, still rapping, still putting out projects. I think this is like his 22nd album. I mean, just a phenomenal run. I do consider him, I flip-flop with it a lot, but, he's my GOAT, personal GOAT, greatest of all time. I can go on for days and days, hours and hours just about Nas the MC, but really getting into this album, Lightyears with DJ Premier, years in the making. I mean, going back to I Am, like late 90s, people were talking about a Nas and DJ Premier getting together. They have countless classic records together. One of my all-time favorite Nas songs, Second Childhood, from Still Illmatic. Nas is like, I mean, you can go a laundry list of things, but an album like this kind of reminds me of Missionary with Dr. Dre and Snoop Dogg. Didn't get the acclaim that whether it deserved but it's one of those things where it's really hard to satisfy the fans, really, when you're taking that long to put out a project. Like, it's going to be very difficult to put out something that's going to be cohesive, that everyone's going to like. I mean, people are not going to like the same thing regardless. But especially now, and where this quick microwave society of music, now it almost feels like you don't have an excuse not to put out, a project. So it's really dope, to see this. But it reminded me of that album where you have one producer, one MC, rock out. And this album kind of mirrors to me Missionary, because I really enjoyed the project. Now, am I saying that there's songs as good, if not better, than, like I said, your Nas is Like, your Second Childhood? There's some that can definitely rank up there. I do have some some personal favorites I love from this. My Story, Your Story, with AZ. Kind of gave that classic, like, late 90s, The Firm type feel. Premier, I kind of consider his production kind of similar to Dre, where Dr. Dre is a, big mixing, mastering, engineering, musical monster, a genius, but he's very, very technical and he's very melodic. And it can be very simple bass line, like a song like Round Here, or you listen to Still DRE, the percussion and the using a ukulele, you know, those things. He's a very technical producer. DJ Premier is a technical producer in the same sense, but also a DJ. Like, he has classic scratches which he incorporates into choruses, into the beat in certain situations. He had one of my favorite tracks from last year, Who the Hardest, that he did for Dog Pound on their project. It's a very, very simple beat, but when you have MCs the caliber of DPGC, you don't need the beat overpowering the MCs. It can be very simple. Stranded on Death Row by Dr. Dre. He adds a lot of different elements into it, but it's just a hardcore beat, and you just let MCs just slay that shit. Same thing here for DJ Premier. It's the simplicity, and I see a lot of people with their reviews, they're like, he's lost a bit, Nas has lost a bit. Okay, again, is it on 90s level or 2000s level production? No. Is it 10 Crack Commandments, or is it The Evils? No. There are tracks that, like I said, are very similar to that. Like, I love the beat for New York State of Mind 3. But is New York State of Mind 3 better than New York State of Mind 1 or 2? No, it's not. It's up there, but to say it's better than those, no. I say all that to say I can still appreciate the project. And again, that's why I said I grew up listening to Nas, in his 20s, and now, like I said, he's in his 50s and he's maturing. I can listen to a Scarface album. I can listen to an Ice Cube album. These guys are in their mid 50s, soon will be in their early 60s, and they can still rap and MC and make great music at a high level. And Nas, I put in that same category as well. New York State of Mind Part 3, super dope track. Another one, Third Childhood. Dope production. It was a little repetitive to me because they kind of used basically the same chorus from Second Childhood, so it kind of felt more like a remix as opposed to an actual track. Kind of reminded me of Thief's Theme and Hip Hop Is Dead. It was like the same beat, so that was kind of weird and listening to that, but I still appreciate the track. It's legendary DJ Premier scratches, dope production, dope storytelling. Nas is a top 5, storyteller all time easily for me. It's up there with G-Rap, up there with Cube, up there with Biggie. I can go on and on. Big L. As far as great storytelling MCs, he is up there, and a lot of these tracks kind of flow in that same vein. There's at times where Nas's flow it's a little bit more slowed down, and at times it's got a little choppy, but all in all, his voice is still pristine, his flow is still on point, cadence, everything with that guy is still razor sharp. And I think it's kind of disingenuous to an artist to compare a lot of their albums, because I look at it as like growth. You're not the same person, or you would hope you weren't. Some good, some bad. You take that out that you were when you're 18 years old, when you're in your 40s, or if you have kids, or if you become a grandfather or a grandmother. Like, your mentality and things that you do is completely different. And I allow that with artists that I listen to, especially that are older. Like I said, the Scarfaces, the Ice Cubes, the Nas. Look at all the albums that dropped this year from MCs, like, older MCs. All of them pretty much on mass appeal. You got a Mobb Deep album. It was unreleased Prodigy verses, but it felt like a cohesive Mobb Deep album. A dope album. You got De La Soul, another great project. These guys, same thing in that, 50 and over age bracket at this point. You got Raekwon that dropped an album, Ghostface. The list of MCs is endless because there was a thing there for a while where people were kind of using ageism in hip hop. He's too old to put out, music. Why is he putting out music? Puffy said something that made a lot of sense. R&B really needed an adult contemporary, like a true music label. And I don't agree with everything Puffy says, but he was spot on about this. Meaning, older artists like your New Editions or, now Jodeci or Boyz II Men, their age group, my age group, 20s now, we're in our, mid to late 40s. And those groups still put out quality music and we will still support that. That's important for hip hop. It gives it that balance. And these guys are still going out and selling out shows and making money. So someone out there is watching them. So, but again, that's just me. I just think people need to give artists more their flowers and allow them to blossom and grow into, who they're going to be, and allow that music to do that as well. Like I said, I could go on and on about this. Nasty, Esco Nasir, another dope one. Welcome to the Underground. Just a lot of dope tracks on this project. I've listened to it about 4 times, front to back. Out of 5, I give it a solid 4. It's definitely an album of the year candidate. I can't remember the last really, really bad or just terrible album that Nas has dropped. Now, I wasn't a big fan of Nostradamus, but the whole bootlegging with the I Am project, the OG I Am, if it would have dropped double album, would have been probably top 10, top 15 album all time. Just with all of the lost tapes, tracks, and everything from Nas. But, this album is definitely up there if you like King's Disease, any of those projects, another kind of slept on or depend who you talk to type project that he put out with Hit Boy with the production. But it was really dope. I hate that it took this long for Nas and DJ Premier to drop an album. I felt like, they should have dozens of these, but, sometimes things happen, sometimes they don't. We didn't get a Dr. Dre produced album for Rakim. We just got a couple tracks here and there. Were they dope? Yeah, they were cool. Kind of made you want more, but, shit happens sometimes. But I'm glad this album came out. It's super, super dope. Like I said, again, is it classic Nas, classic DJ Premier, in spots here and there, but it's still a great album to listen to. I'm sure it will grow on me more over time. Urge everybody to check it out. Again, I can ramble on and on as I pretty much have right now, but especially about Nas, like I said, one of the all-time GOATs, actually my personal greatest of all time in MC. Salute to Nas for a phenomenal 2025 and looking forward to what you and Mass Appeal drop in 2026. D-Nice, I2G Hip Hop, again, the site, www.illuminati2g.com. Check us out. Also check us out on YouTube at I2G Hip Hop, letter I, number 2, letter G, Hip Hop, all one word. D-Nice signing off. Check out that new Lightyears album by DJ Premier and Nas. Peace.